The champagne glass shattered against marble, not from celebration, but from rage. Adrienne Voss, CEO of Voss Capital, stood frozen as her company's stock ticker plummeted in real time across the 70-inch monitor. $80 million. Gone. Just like that. And the man who'd warned her? A grease-stained mechanic in work boots she'd publicly humiliated 60 seconds earlier. "Don't cry when I'm done," he'd said. She wasn't crying yet, but she would be, because Ethan Cole, the invisible man everyone had laughed at, had just exposed the billion-dollar lie her entire empire was built on, and there was no going back. If you want to see how a single father with calloused hands dismantled the arrogance of the ultra-rich and rebuilt his life from absolute zero, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The elevator doors opened on the 52nd floor with a soft chime that felt like a warning bell. Ethan Cole stepped out into a world that didn't want him. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city skyline like a painting worth more than his annual salary. Servers in crisp black uniforms glided through clusters of men in suits that cost more than his truck, and women draped in silk that whispered wealth with every movement. He looked down at his boots, steel-toed, scuffed. There was a grease stain on his jeans he'd missed right above the knee. "You made it." Ethan turned. Marcus Chen stood there, grinning, a glass of something gold and expensive in one hand. Marcus was an old college friend, back when Ethan had been someone different, someone who belonged in rooms like this. "Barely," Ethan muttered. "Your text said business casual." Marcus laughed. "It is, for them." He gestured at the crowd. "For you, it's a favor. I needed a body to hit the head count. Donors get twitchy when the room looks empty. Glad to be useful? Come on, grab a drink. Try not to touch anything expensive." They wove through the crowd. Ethan felt eyes sliding over him, quick assessments, immediate dismissals. He was used to it. 5 years working in a garage did that. It sanded you down until you fit into tight spaces, until you stopped expecting to be noticed. Marcus handed him a glass. "Champagne. Don't look at me like that. It's free." Ethan took a sip. It tasted like regret. "So what is this thing anyway? Networking event? Voss Capital throws it twice a year. Big investors, portfolio managers, some tech founders looking for funding. Basically a room full of people pretending they're smarter than each other." "Sounds awful." "It is, but the shrimp is good." Ethan scanned the room. In the center, surrounded by a loose orbit of admirers, stood a woman he recognized immediately. Adrienne Voss. She was younger than he expected, mid-30s maybe, sharp suit, sharper eyes. She moved through conversations like a knife through butter, smooth and deliberate. "That's her," Marcus said quietly. "The queen herself. She looks thrilled to be here." "She's not. Adrienne hates these things, but optics matter. She shows up, smiles for an hour, then disappears into whatever empire building she does at midnight." Ethan watched her. There was something brittle in the way she held herself, like she was performing a role she'd outgrown but couldn't quit. "Why'd you really drag me here, Marcus?" Marcus hesitated. "Honestly, I thought it'd be good for you. Get out of the garage for a night. See what's still out there." "I know what's out there. I chose the garage." "Did you? Or did the garage just choose you back?" Ethan didn't answer, because Marcus wasn't wrong. 5 years ago, everything had collapsed. His wife, his career, his entire sense of who he was. The garage had been the only place that didn't ask questions, the only place that let him disappear. But standing here now, surrounded by people who still believed the world owed them something, Ethan felt the old hunger stir, the part of him that used to solve problems no one else could see, the part that used to matter. "Mr. Chen." They both turned. A man in a navy suit approached, hand extended. He had the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. "David Brennan, portfolio strategy at Voss. We met last quarter." Marcus shook his hand. "Right. Good to see you again." David's gaze slid to Ethan. "And you are?" "Ethan Cole." "Ethan's an old friend," Marcus added quickly. "Guest of mine." David's smile thinned. "I see. Well, enjoy the evening. The presentation starts in 10 minutes. He nodded curtly and walked away. "Friendly guy," Ethan said. "He's a shark. They all are. just with better teeth. The crowd began shifting toward the far end of the room where a massive screen was descending from the ceiling. Ethan followed Marcus, finding a spot near the back. A few people glanced his way, then away. He might as well have been furniture. The lights dimmed. Adrienne Voss stepped onto a small raised platform, microphone in hand. The room fell silent instantly. "Good evening," she said. Her voice was smooth, controlled. "Thank you for being here. I'll keep this brief because I know you're all here for the shrimp, not a lecture." Polite laughter rippled through the crowd. "Tonight, I want to talk about vision. Specifically, the vision that separates those who succeed from those who merely survive." The screen behind her lit up with a complex financial graph, lines and projections, percentages and forecasts. Ethan's eyes locked onto it immediately. Something was wrong. "Our Q3 performance exceeded expectations by 18%, Adrienne continued. "Our algorithm-driven portfolio management has consistently outperformed traditional models, and our projected ROI for the next fiscal year is positioned to redefine industry standards." Ethan's jaw tightened. He leaned forward slightly, eyes scanning the data. The numbers didn't match. Not in an obvious way, but in the small gaps between projected growth and actual liquidity allocation. In the risk distribution that weighted too heavily on volatile sectors. In the timeline that assumed static market conditions over variables that were already shifting. "This is possible because we don't just follow trends," Adrienne said. "We create them. We anticipate shifts before they happen. We invest in intelligence, not speculation." Ethan's pulse quickened. He could see it now. The pattern. The flaw buried in the presentation like a hairline fracture in glass. "Of course," Adrienne added with a slight smile. "I'm sure many of you have insights of your own, strategies you'd deploy differently, perhaps even critiques of our approach." She scanned the room, her gaze casual but sharp. "Anyone?" Silence. Then her eyes landed on Ethan. He didn't look away. Adrienne's smile widened. "You." In the back, Ethan felt the room turn. Dozens of faces swiveling toward him. Marcus grabbed his arm. "Don't." But Adrienne was already gesturing. "Please, come up here. I'm genuinely curious." It wasn't an invitation. It was a challenge. Ethan set down his glass. He walked through the crowd, boots heavy on polished floors. Whispers followed him. Someone snickered. Another voice murmured, "Is he serious?" He reached the platform. Adrienne handed him the microphone, her expression amused. "Your name?" "Ethan Cole." "Well, Ethan Cole, you looked like you had thoughts. Share them." The screen loomed behind her, the flawed data glowing like a dare. Ethan turned to face the crowd, faces in tailored suits, watches worth more than his daughter's college fund, eyes full of condescension. He'd been invisible for 5 years. Maybe it was time to be seen. "Don't cry when I'm done," Ethan said quietly. Adrienne's smile faltered, just slightly, and then Ethan turned to the screen and began dismantling her empire, one number at a time. "Your Q3 performance," Ethan said, "didn't exceed expectations by 18%. Adrienne's expression hardened. "Excuse me?" "It exceeded projections by 18%. But projections aren't expectations. They're aspirations dressed up as certainty." He gestured at the screen. "Your actual liquidity allocation shows a 7% underperformance relative to risk-adjusted benchmarks in the same period." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Adrienne crossed her arms. "That's an aggressive claim from someone who walked in wearing work boots." "The boots don't change the math." "Then explain the math." Ethan pointed at a specific section of the graph. "This cluster here. High-yield emerging tech. You weighted it at 32% of the portfolio. That's fine in a bull market, but 3 of your top 5 holdings in that sector are tied to supply chains flagged for instability in the last 8 weeks. Flagged by whom? Trade analysts, shipping indices, customs data, public information if you know where to look." Adrienne's jaw tightened. "You're saying our research team missed this?" "I'm saying they saw it and ignored it, because the short-term optics were good." Another murmur, louder this time. David Brennan stepped forward from the crowd. "This is absurd. Who is this guy?" Ethan didn't look at him. He kept his eyes on the screen. Your algorithm assumes static risk distribution, but the variables feeding it are weighted toward historical trends, not predictive modeling. That works until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, the cascade hits fast. Adrian's face was unreadable now. You're suggesting we're vulnerable to a cascade event. I'm suggesting you're already in one. You just don't see it yet. Based on what evidence? Ethan hesitated. This was the line. Cross it, and there was no going back. He crossed it. Your internal loss reports, Ethan said quietly. The ones that don't match the public-facing documents. The room went silent. Adrian's voice dropped to ice. How would you know anything about internal reports? I don't. But your reaction just confirmed they exist. Her eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Maybe. Or maybe I spent the last 3 minutes reading the subtext in your data. The gaps between projected earnings and actual cash reserves. The timing of your stock buybacks versus liquidity events. The pattern of write-offs buried in footnotes. David stepped onto the platform. This is slander. Wait. Adrian held up a hand. Her gaze locked onto Ethan. You said cascade. Define it. Ethan turned back to the screen. Your portfolio's resilience is built on assumptions about sector independence, but 4 of your top 10 holdings share overlapping dependencies. Same suppliers, same regulatory environments, same geopolitical exposure. If one fails, it triggers margin calls. If 2 fail simultaneously, you're underwater on covenant thresholds. That's paranoid speculation. It's probability. And the probability spiked 2 weeks ago when your largest tech holding announced layoffs masked as restructuring. That's not growth. That's damage control. Adrian stared at him. The room held its breath. Then she turned to David. Pull up the Helix Systems file. David's face went pale. Adrian, we don't need to... Now. David hesitated. Then he pulled out his phone, tapped rapidly, and handed it to her. Adrian scanned the screen. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. Subtle, like a foundation cracking. She looked up at Ethan. How did you know about Helix? I didn't. I guessed. Bullshit. Fine. I've been tracking sector performance for 5 years. Helix's stock behavior over the last quarter screamed internal crisis. Massive insider selling, delayed earnings calls, press releases full of corporate speak and zero substance. You don't need classified intel to see a sinking ship. Adrian handed the phone back to David without breaking eye contact with Ethan. Helix filed for Chapter 11 protection this morning. Pre-market. Embargo until Monday. The room erupted, voices overlapping, panic threading through the shock. Ethan stood still, watching Adrian. She wasn't panicking. She was calculating. How much exposure? Someone shouted. Adrian's voice cut through the noise. Manageable. Manageable? David's voice cracked. We're holding 18 million in Helix derivatives alone. If they collapse, they won't collapse, Adrian snapped. Bankruptcy protection isn't liquidation. But the margin calls are being handled. She turned back to Ethan. You said cascade. Helix is one domino. What's the next? Ethan shook his head slowly. I don't work for you. No, you work in a garage. That's right. Then why are you here? I was invited. To humiliate me? To fill a head count. Ethan set the microphone down on the edge of the platform. I didn't come here to wreck your night, but you put me on stage. You asked for my thoughts. I gave them. Adrian stepped closer. Her voice dropped low enough that only he could hear. Who are you, really? Ethan met her eyes. Nobody important. Nobody important doesn't dismantle a Fortune 500 portfolio in 5 minutes. Maybe I got lucky. You didn't. For so long a moment, neither of them moved. The room buzzed around them, voices rising and falling like static. Then Adrian turned to the crowd. Everyone out. Silence. Now. The crowd hesitated. Then slowly people began moving toward the elevators. Murmurs of confusion. A few protests quickly silenced by Adrian's glare. Marcus caught Ethan's eye from across the room. He mouthed, "What the hell?" Ethan shrugged. Within 2 minutes, the 52nd floor was empty except for Ethan, Adrian, and David, who stood frozen near the screen. Adrian gestured at David. Leave. Adrian, out! David's face went red. But he turned and walked to the elevator without another word. The doors closed behind him. Adrian turned back to Ethan. Sit. I'd rather stand. It wasn't a request. Ethan sat on the edge of the platform. Adrian paced in front of him, heels clicking on marble. You know things you shouldn't, she said finally. And you see patterns most analysts miss. So I'll ask one more time. Who are you? I told you. Nobody. Then tell me something useful, like why a mechanic knows how to read derivative exposure. Ethan looked at her, really looked. Past the armor of the tailored suit and the sharp words, he saw exhaustion, pressure, the weight of holding an empire together with both hands. He sighed. I used to do this for a living. Data analysis? Quantitative risk assessment, algorithmic modeling, portfolio stress testing. He paused. I was good at it. What happened? Life? Adrian stopped pacing. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight. Her eyes narrowed. You walked away. I didn't walk, I fell, and I didn't get back up. Why not? Because some things break you too hard to fix. Adrian studied him. Then slowly she sat down beside him on the platform. Not close, but not distant either. The Helix situation, she said quietly. It's worse than I let on. I know. If the margin calls hit simultaneously, we're looking at systemic exposure across multiple funds. It could trigger a chain reaction. I know. Then you also know I'm running out of time to contain it. Ethan nodded. Adrian leaned back, staring up at the chandelier. I built this company from nothing. 12 years, 80-hour weeks, sacrificed everything. And now some mid-tier tech firm I barely noticed is going to bring it all down because my analysts were too arrogant to see the warning signs. They weren't arrogant. They were optimized. She glanced at him. What's the difference? Arrogance ignores data. Optimization ignores context. Your team ran the numbers and saw green, but numbers don't account for human behavior. Panic. Desperation. The irrational choices people make when the ground shifts. And you account for that. I used to. Adrienne was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, brushing invisible dust from her skirt. I need help, she said. Real help. Not the sycophants on my payroll who tell me what I want to hear. Ethan stood too. You've got a whole building full of analysts. None of them saw Helix coming. You did. I guessed. You didn't. She turned to face him fully. I want to hire you. Ethan blinked. What? Consultant, contract basis, 2 weeks. You audit my portfolio, identify vulnerabilities, and help me build a containment strategy before this turns into a bloodbath. I'm not qualified. You just proved otherwise. I work in a garage. And before that? Ethan didn't answer. Adrienne stepped closer. I'll pay you $50,000 for 2 weeks' work, full access to data, no restrictions. I have a daughter. Bring her. She's 7. Then work nights. I don't care. Just say yes. Ethan stared at her. The offer was insane. The money was life-changing. And the idea of stepping back into this world, the one that had chewed him up and spit him out, made his chest tighten. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Curiosity. The same curiosity that used to keep him awake at night, chasing patterns through endless data. The same drive that made him good at this before everything fell apart. I need to think about it, he said. Adrienne pulled a business card from her pocket and pressed it into his hand. You have until Monday morning. After that, the offer expires. She walked toward the elevator, heels echoing in the empty space. Adrienne, she paused, finger hovering over the button. The Helix problem, Ethan said. It's not your only vulnerability. She turned slowly. What do you mean? The data you showed tonight, there's another pattern, smaller, harder to see. But if I'm right, Helix is just the spark. The real fire is already burning. Her face went pale. Where? I don't know yet. But I will. The elevator doors opened. Adrienne stepped inside, then held them open with one hand. Monday, she said. 9 a.m. Don't be late. The doors closed. Ethan stood alone on the 52nd floor, the business card heavy in his hand. Outside the windows, the city glittered. A million lights, a million lives. And somewhere in the data streams flowing beneath it all, $1 billion mistake waiting to detonate. He thought about his daughter, about the garage, about the quiet, invisible life he'd built to keep the past buried. Then he looked down at the card. Adrian Voss, CEO, Voss Capital, and beneath it, handwritten in sharp script, "Don't make me regret this." Ethan smiled despite himself. Then he headed for the elevator, boots heavy on marble, already thinking about the patterns he'd seen, already chasing the fire. The weekend passed like a held breath. Ethan spent Saturday morning under a Chevy Silverado, replacing a worn transmission mount while his mind ran calculations he hadn't touched in years. Oil dripped onto his forearms. The wrench slipped twice. But the numbers kept coming, clean and sharp, like muscle memory that refused to die. His daughter Mia sat cross-legged on a rolling stool nearby, coloring in a princess book that was mostly scribbles. She was humming something off-key, completely absorbed. "Dad?" "Yeah, Bug." "Why do you look mad at the truck?" Ethan slid out from underneath, wiping his hands on a rag. "I'm not mad at the truck. Your face is doing the thing." "What thing?" She scrunched up her features into an exaggerated frown. "The thinking too hard thing." He laughed despite himself. "Sorry, got a lot on my mind." "About what?" "Work stuff." Mia tilted her head. "But this is work. Different work. Like before Mom died work?" The question landed like a punch. Ethan froze, rag still in his hands. Mia watched him with those wide brown eyes that saw too much for 7 years old. He cleared his throat. "Yeah, like that." "Are you going back?" "I don't know yet." She considered this, then she went back to coloring, humming again like the conversation had never happened. But Ethan saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her crayon pressed harder against the paper. She remembered. Not everything. She'd been too young when Sarah died, but she remembered the aftermath, the months when Ethan had been a ghost in his own house, barely functional, held together by responsibility and nothing else. She remembered the silence, the fear that he might disappear too. He crouched beside her stool. "Hey, look at me." Mia looked up. "If I do this," Ethan said carefully, "it doesn't change anything between us. You're still first. Always. Promise?" "Promise." She studied his face. Then she nodded and went back to her coloring. Ethan stood, joints creaking. He looked at the business card taped to his toolbox. Adrian's handwriting stared back at him like a dare. He had until Monday. By Sunday night, he still hadn't decided. Mia was asleep upstairs. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. Ethan sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, staring at a blank screen. He'd pulled up Voss Capital's public filings, SEC reports, quarterly statements, the surface data that anyone could access. And beneath it, he could see the cracks. Subtle. But there. The Helix exposure was bad. But Adrian had been right to worry about something deeper. Because buried in the footnotes of 3 separate subsidiaries, Ethan had found overlapping liabilities tied to a single offshore entity, small amounts individually. But collectively, they painted a picture of intentional obfuscation. Someone was hiding money. Or moving it. And if Ethan was reading it right, that someone was doing it from inside Voss Capital. He closed the laptop, rubbed his eyes. This wasn't his problem. He could walk away, keep his head down, stay invisible. But the pattern wouldn't let him go. It hooked into his brain like a splinter, sharp and insistent. He thought about Adrian standing on that platform, armor cracking just enough to show the exhaustion underneath. He thought about the $50,000, about what that could mean for Mia, college fund, safety net, options. And he thought about the part of himself he'd buried 5 years ago, the part that was good at this, the part that mattered. At 11 p.m., he opened his phone and typed a message to the number on Adrian's card. "I'm in, but we do this my way." He hit send before he could change his mind. The response came 30 seconds later. 9 a.m. Don't be late. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. Ethan dropped Mia off at school, watched her disappear into the building with her backpack bouncing, then sat in his truck for 5 full minutes staring at the steering wheel. He was wearing the only button-down shirt he owned. It was wrinkled. He'd tried ironing it and made it worse. "Mechanic pretending to be an analyst," he muttered. "This is insane." but he started the engine anyway. Voss Capital's headquarters occupied 15 floors of a steel and glass tower downtown. Ethan parked in the visitor lot, took the elevator to the 23rd floor, and stepped into a reception area that looked like it cost more than his house. The receptionist glanced up. Her smile was professional and cold. "Can I help you?" "Ethan Cole. I have a meeting with Adrienne Voss." She tapped her keyboard, frowned, tapped again. "I don't see you on the schedule." "Try again." "Sir, if you're not on the—" "He's with me." Ethan turned. Adrienne stood near the elevator bank, coffee in hand, looking like she hadn't slept. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back tight. "Follow me," she said. They walked through an open floor plan filled with analysts hunched over triple monitors. No one looked up. The air hummed with tension and the clicking of keyboards. Adrienne's office was at the far end, corner view. Minimalist furniture, a desk that looked like it had never seen clutter. She closed the door behind them and set her coffee down. "You're late." "It's 8:58. "I said 9. That means 8:45. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You want to fire me already?" "I'm considering it." But there was no heat in her voice, just exhaustion. She gestured at a chair. Ethan sat. Adrienne remained standing, arms crossed. "I need ground rules," she said. "Okay. First, everything you see here is confidential. You sign in an NDA before you touch a single file." "Fine." "Second, you report directly to me, no one else. I don't care what you find or who it implicates. You bring it to me first." "Agreed." "Third, 2 weeks. That's it. After that, you're gone." Ethan nodded. Adrienne studied him. "Why'd you change your mind?" "The money." "Bullshit." He met her gaze. "You're right. It's not just the money." "Then what?" "Curiosity. I saw something Friday night, and I can't stop thinking about it." The secondary pattern. "Yeah." Adrienne walked to the window, staring out at the city. "I pulled the files you'd need to prove it. Spent all weekend going through them myself." "And?" She turned back. "You were right. There's something there. I can't see it clearly yet, but it's there." "Show me." Adrienne pulled a tablet from her desk and handed it to him. "Start with these subsidiary transactions over the last 18 months. Focus on anything flagged for review but never escalated." Ethan scrolled through the data. His pulse quickened. Even at a glance, he could see discrepancies, transfers that didn't align, approvals from shell entities. "Who has access to these accounts?" he asked. "Executive level only, maybe a dozen people." "That's your suspect pool." Adrienne's jaw tightened. "I know." Ethan looked up. "You think it's someone close?" "I know it is." "Who?" She shook her head. "I need proof before I make accusations. That's why you're here." Ethan set the tablet down. "If this is internal theft, it's not just about recovering money. Whoever's doing this knows your systems inside out. They've had months, maybe years, to build safeguards. Pulling the thread could collapse things faster than Helix." "I'm aware." "Are you?" "Because once we start, there's no halfway. Either we find them and burn it all down, or they find out we're looking and burn us first." Adrienne's expression hardened. "Then we'd better be thorough." A knock interrupted them. The door opened, and David Brennan stepped in without waiting for permission. "Adrienne, we need to talk about the Helix." He stopped, seeing Ethan. "What's he doing here?" "Working," Adrienne said flatly. David's face flushed. "You hired him?" "Consultant." "You can't be serious. He's a mechanic." "He's more qualified than half the team that missed Helix." David's voice rose. "He humiliated you in front of 50 investors. He told me the truth. That's more than you've done in 6 months." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. David's eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I want a full audit of the portfolio by end of day. Real numbers. Not the sanitized version you've been feeding me." "Adrienne." "End of day, David." He stared at her, then at Ethan. Something cold flickered in his expression. "Fine." He turned and left, slamming the door behind him. Ethan exhaled slowly. "You just made an enemy." "I made an enemy the day I started asking questions he didn't want to answer." Adrienne sat down heavily. David's been with me since the beginning. He's brilliant, ruthless when he needs to be. But lately, you think it's him. I think he's hiding something. Whether it's incompetence or malice, I don't know yet. Ethan picked up the tablet again. Then let's find out. They worked through the morning in focused silence. Adrienne pulled files. Ethan analyzed patterns. The data was a maze, deliberately constructed to obscure rather than illuminate. But slowly, threads emerged. 3 subsidiaries, all registered offshore, all moving money in small, irregular increments that stayed just below reporting thresholds. Smart, Ethan muttered. What? Whoever's doing this knows the regulation's cold. They're structuring transfers to avoid flags. But they got greedy. How? Ethan pointed at a cluster of transactions. Here, December through February. The amount stayed small, but the frequency spiked. 40 transactions in 60 days. That's not normal operational flow. That's someone rushing. Adrienne leaned closer. Rushing why? Either they needed the money fast or they knew time was running out. Helix. Ethan nodded. If Helix was already unstable in December and someone inside knew it, they'd want to move assets before the collapse triggered scrutiny. Adrienne's face went pale. That's not just theft. That's insider trading. And fraud. And about 5 other felonies. She stood abruptly pacing. If this gets out, it won't. Not yet. Ethan set the tablet down. But we need to move carefully. Whoever's doing this has access to everything, including surveillance on who's looking at what files. Adrienne stopped. You think they know we're investigating? I think we have to assume they do. As if on cue, Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from a number he didn't recognize. Careful what you dig up, mechanic. Some engines are better left broken. He showed it to Adrienne. Her expression darkened. They're watching, she said quietly. Yeah. What do we do? Ethan thought for a moment, then he stood. We set a trap. What kind of trap? The kind that makes them think they're winning until they're not. Adrienne studied him. You've done this before. It wasn't a question. Ethan looked away. Different life. Tell me. No. Ethan, you hired me to find a thief, not to dredge up my past. His voice was sharper than he intended. Let's stick to the job. Adrienne held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. Fine. What's the trap? We leak false information. Make it look like we're chasing a dead end. Meanwhile, I backtrack the real transactions and build a timeline. Once we have enough proof, we move fast. And if they panic? Then they make mistakes. And mistakes leave evidence. Adrienne walked back to her desk. Do it. Ethan spent the next 3 hours constructing the false trail. He buried it in legitimate audit requests, made it look organic. By noon, the bait was set. Then he went to work on the real investigation. The transactions led to a bank in the Caymans. From there, they split into multiple accounts, each one layered behind another shell entity. It was elegant, professional, the work of someone who'd done this before. But everyone made mistakes, and Ethan was good at finding them. By 3 p.m., he'd traced the money to a single endpoint, a holding company registered under a name he didn't recognize. But the registration date matched a timeline that made his stomach drop. He pulled up the corporate filings, cross-referenced employee records, and there it was. The holding company's registered agent was listed as M. Chen, Marcus. Ethan stared at the screen. His pulse pounded in his ears. No, it couldn't be. He pulled more files, bank statements, transaction logs, and with each new piece of data, the picture became clearer. Marcus had access. Marcus had motive. And Marcus had been the one to invite Ethan to the party where Ethan had exposed Helix, the party where Marcus had known exactly who would be there. Ethan's phone buzzed again. Another text. You should have stayed in the garage. His hands shook. He set the phone down and walked out of Adrienne's office, down the hall to the restroom, locked himself in a stall, and tried to breathe. Marcus, his oldest friend, the guy who dragged him out of the wreckage 5 years ago when Sarah died, who checked in every month even when Ethan stopped answering, who'd insisted he come to the party because he thought it would help. or because he needed Ethan to create chaos, to distract from what was really happening. Ethan leaned against the stall door. His chest felt like it was caving in. He thought about calling Marcus, demanding answers, but if Marcus was involved, that would only tip him off. And if Marcus wasn't involved, Ethan would be accusing his only friend of a crime he might not have committed. Ethan pulled out his phone, stared at Marcus's contact. His thumb hovered over the call button. Then he put the phone away. He walked back to Adrian's office. She looked up when he entered. "You look like hell," she said. "I found something." "What?" Ethan handed her the tablet. "The endpoint. The account where all the money's been funneling." Adrian scanned the screen. Her expression shifted. "Marcus Chen?" "Yeah." "Your friend?" "Yeah." She looked at him. "Are you sure?" "The data doesn't lie." "But people do." Adrian set the tablet down. "You said it yourself. Whoever's doing this is smart. What if they're using Marcus as a front? Then we need to prove it." "How?" Ethan thought. "We bring him in, confront him directly, see how he reacts. And if he runs, then we know he's guilty." Adrienne leaned back in her chair. "This could blow up in our faces." "It already has." She nodded slowly. "Okay, set it up." Ethan pulled out his phone and texted Marcus. "Need to talk. Can you meet me at Voss Capital tonight?" 7 p.m. The response came fast. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just need a favor. I'll be there." Ethan pocketed his phone. "Done." Adrian stood. "I'll have security ready, just in case." "He's not dangerous." "You don't know that." "I know Marcus." "You thought you did." The words hit harder than Ethan expected, because she was right. He'd thought he knew Marcus. But people changed, people lied, and desperation made monsters out of saints. 7 p.m. arrived too fast. Ethan waited in Adrian's office. She sat across from him, silent and tense. 2 security guards stood outside the door, out of sight but close. At 7:03, Marcus walked in. He looked the same, easy smile, relaxed posture. He clapped Ethan on the shoulder. "Man, you've been busy. I heard you're working here now." "Consulting," Ethan said carefully. "Same thing." Marcus glanced at Adrian. "Ms. Voss, good to see you again." Adrian didn't smile. "Sit down, Mr. Chen." Marcus's smile faltered. He looked at Ethan. "What's going on?" Ethan gestured at the chair. "Sit." Marcus sat slowly. His eyes moved between them, reading the room. "Okay, now I'm worried." Ethan pulled up the tablet, turned it so Marcus could see. "Tell me about this." Marcus leaned forward, scanning the data. His face went pale. "Where did you get this?" "Answer the question." "Ethan, I don't—" Marcus stopped. His jaw tightened. "You think I stole from Voss Capital?" "Did you?" "No." Marcus's voice was hard now, defensive. "I would never." "Then explain why your name is on these accounts." "I can't." "Can't or won't?" Marcus stood abruptly. "I didn't steal anything." Adrian's voice cut through. "Then who did?" Marcus turned to her. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he sank back into the chair, head in his hands. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but I think I was set up." The room went silent, except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic 23 floors below. Ethan stared at Marcus, his oldest friend, the man who'd stood beside him at Sarah's funeral when everyone else had looked away, who'd brought groceries when Ethan couldn't leave the house, who'd never asked for anything in return. And now Marcus sat there with his head in his hands, claiming he'd been set up. Adrian broke the silence first. "Explain." Marcus didn't look up. "About 6 months ago, David Brennan approached me, said he needed help with some offshore accounts. Paperwork stuff. He told me Voss Capital was expanding into new markets and needed someone outside the company to handle regulatory filings." "And you believed him?" Adrian's voice was ice. "He offered me 20 grand for 3 weeks of work. I'm a mid-level consultant, Adrian. That's half my annual salary." Marcus finally raised his head. His eyes were red. "I didn't ask questions I should have asked." Ethan leaned forward. "What exactly did he have you do?" "Set up shell companies. Register them under my name. Transfer ownership to holding entities he provided. I thought it was legitimate corporate restructuring." You thought wrong, Adrian said. I know that now. Marcus's voice cracked. But at the time, it was just paperwork, legal documents. Everything looked official. Ethan felt something twist in his gut because he believed Marcus. The desperation in his voice wasn't an act. Neither was the shame. When did you figure it out? Ethan asked quietly. Marcus looked at him. Friday night, after you destroyed that presentation. I went home and started thinking about the accounts I'd set up, the timing, the structure, and I realized David had used me to build the exact kind of system you were describing. Why didn't you come forward? And say what? That I was stupid enough to help commit fraud without knowing it? That I put my name on documents I didn't understand? Marcus laughed bitterly. I've got a wife and 2 kids, Ethan. If this comes out, I'm done. Criminally, professionally, everything. Adrienne stood and walked to the window. Her reflection stared back, hard and calculating. David Brennan has been with me for 11 years. He built half the systems we use. He's on the board. He's also stealing from you, Ethan said. Allegedly. The evidence is circumstantial without direct proof of intent. Adrienne turned back. Marcus's testimony helps, but David will claim he was acting on my authority, that the offshore accounts were legitimate business structures. Without a smoking gun, this turns into a he said, she said that destroys my company's reputation whether we win or not. Ethan stood. Then we get the smoking gun. How? We make David think Marcus flipped, force him to make a move. Marcus's eyes widened. Wait, you want to use me as bait? You're already bait, Ethan said bluntly. Your name is all over this. The only question is whether we control the narrative or David does. And if he comes after me? We'll have security on you, full surveillance. The moment he makes contact, we record everything. Marcus shook his head. This is insane. It's the only play we have. Ethan met his friend's eyes. I know I'm asking a lot, but if we don't move now, David buries this and you go down alone. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he exhaled slowly. What do you need me to do? Adrienne pulled out her phone. First, you're going to send David a message. Tell him we brought you in for questioning. Tell him you didn't say anything, but you're scared. He'll know it's a trap. Maybe. But he'll also know that if you actually flip, he's finished. He'll have to respond. She handed Marcus her phone. Use this. Burner number. Untraceable. Marcus took the phone with shaking hands. What do I say? Ethan sat beside him. Keep it simple. You're panicking. You need advice. Make him think you're about to break. Marcus typed slowly, reading aloud as he went. David. They know about the accounts. Brought me in tonight. I didn't tell them anything, but they're pushing hard. I don't know what to do. Call me. He looked at Ethan. That work? Send it. Marcus hit send. The message disappeared into the digital void. Adrienne took the phone back. Now we wait. The response came 11 minutes later. Don't panic. Don't talk to anyone. I'll handle it. Meet me at the usual place. 1 hour. Marcus stared at the screen. The usual place. He means a bar we used to go to, near the financial district. Ethan looked at Adrienne. Can you get a team there? Already on it. She was typing rapidly on her own phone. Plainclothes surveillance, audio, and video. If David incriminates himself, we'll have it recorded. Marcus stood abruptly. I need air. You need to stay focused, Adrienne said sharply. I am focused. I'm also about to have a panic attack. Marcus headed for the door. I'll be back in 5 minutes. He left before either of them could stop him. Ethan moved to follow, but Adrienne grabbed his arm. Let him go. He's barely holding it together. I know, but pushing him won't help. She released his arm. You really trust him? Ethan thought about the question. Trust was a complicated word. It meant different things in different contexts. Did he trust Marcus to be honest? Yes. Did he trust Marcus's judgment? That was harder to answer. I trust that he's telling the truth about being used, Ethan said finally. Whether that makes him innocent or just stupid, I don't know yet. Adrienne nodded. Fair enough. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Adrienne spoke again, her voice quieter. You were good at this. Before. At what? Reading people, seeing patterns, building cases. She looked at him. What happened? Really? Ethan turned away. I told you, life happened. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Ethan, my wife died. The words came out harder than he intended. Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. She was gone before the ambulance arrived. Mia was 2 years old. Adrienne went still. I was working 80-hour weeks back then, Ethan continued, chasing patterns in data, building models, thought I was changing the world. He laughed without humor. Sarah used to joke that I could predict market crashes, but couldn't predict when the milk would go bad. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Doesn't change anything. Ethan looked at her. After she died, I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't look at numbers and see meaning. Couldn't care about algorithms when my daughter was asking why mommy wasn't coming home. So I walked away. Found a job that didn't require thinking. Just doing. But you kept learning. At night, after Mia went to sleep, old habits. He shrugged. Turns out you can't kill curiosity. You can just bury it for a while. Adrienne studied him with an expression he couldn't read. She'd be proud of you, your wife. You didn't know her. I know you're raising your daughter alone while rebuilding a career you walked away from. That takes strength. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. Before Ethan could respond, Marcus came back in. His face was pale, but composed. Okay, I'm ready. Adrienne handed him a small device. Wear this under your shirt. It's a wire. Audio transmitter. The surveillance team will hear everything. Marcus clipped it to his collar, adjusting his shirt to hide it. How do I look? Terrified, Ethan said. That's good. Use it. Marcus nodded. He checked his watch. I should go. It's a 20-minute drive. Ethan walked him to the elevator. As the doors opened, Marcus turned back. If this goes wrong, it won't. But if it does, tell my wife I wasn't a coward. Tell her I tried to fix it. You'll tell her yourself. Marcus managed a weak smile. Then he stepped into the elevator and disappeared. Ethan returned to Adrienne's office. She had a laptop open with a surveillance feed pulled up. Audio equipment on the desk. 2 security personnel stood nearby, earpieces in, faces blank. We're live, one of them said. Subject is in transit. ETA, to location 18 minutes. Adrienne gestured for Ethan to sit. He did, watching the screen. It showed a street view from a camera positioned across from the bar Marcus had mentioned. The entrance was visible. A few people coming and going, normal Monday night crowd. The audio crackled to life. Marcus's voice muffled by fabric. Testing. Can you hear me? One of the security guys nodded, loud and clear. They waited. Ethan's leg bounced involuntarily. Adrienne noticed but didn't comment. At 8:47 p.m., Marcus appeared on the video feed. He walked into the bar, shoulders hunched, hands in pockets. The camera couldn't follow inside, but the audio stayed clear. Background noise, music, conversations bleeding together. Then Marcus's voice. I'm here. Back booth. Footsteps. The scrape of a chair. And then David Brennan's voice, smooth and controlled. You look like hell. I feel like hell? What did you tell them? Nothing, I swear. But Adrienne knows about the accounts, so does that mechanic she hired. Ethan Cole. Yeah, he's the one who found the trail. A pause. Then David spoke again, quieter. What exactly does he know? Everything. The shell companies, the offshore transfers, my name all over the paperwork. Did you tell him I was involved? No, but he's smart, David. He's going to figure it out. Another pause. Longer this time. Ethan could almost hear David thinking. You need to leave, David said finally. Tonight. I'll arrange a flight, get you out of the country until this blows over. Marcus's voice shook. I can't just leave. I have a family. Bring them. You're talking about running. That makes me look guilty. You are guilty, Marcus. Your name is on those accounts. When this breaks, you're the one who goes to prison, not me. Because you set me up. I gave you an opportunity. You took it. What you did with it is on you. The audio picked up Marcus's breathing. Fast, shallow. This is insane, Marcus said. I'm not running. Then you're a fool. David's chair scraped. Adrienne's going to offer you immunity if you testify against me. Don't take it. I have lawyers who'll bury you before you finish a sentence. Why are you doing this? Because I can, because I've earned it. I built this company as much as she did. The difference is she gets credit and I get a salary. David's voice hardened. I took what I was owed. You were just a convenient tool. Ethan felt his hands clench into fists. On the audio, Marcus spoke again. I could go to the SEC right now. Tell them everything. You could, and I'd make sure your wife and kids spend the rest of their lives dealing with the fallout. You know I have connections, Marcus. You know what I'm capable of. Silence. Then Marcus, barely audible. You're threatening my family. I'm stating facts. Make your choice. Leave tonight or deal with the consequences. Footsteps. The sound of David walking away. Then Marcus's voice shaking. Are you getting this? The security guy nodded. Every word. Adrian stood. Bring him in, now. 30 minutes later, Marcus was back in the office. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. Ethan handed him a glass of water. He drank it in 3 gulps. I can't believe I trusted him, Marcus said. He's good at what he does, Adrian replied. She was on the phone with her legal team, pacing near the window. We have enough for criminal charges, fraud, embezzlement, witness intimidation. What about Marcus? Ethan asked. Adrian covered the phone. He cooperates fully. He gets immunity. Standard deal. Marcus looked up. And my name gets dragged through every news outlet in the city. Better than prison, Ethan said bluntly. Easy for you to say. Actually, it's not. But it's reality. Ethan crouched beside Marcus's chair. You made a mistake, a bad one, but you're trying to fix it. That counts for something. Marcus's eyes were wet. Does it? Yeah, it does. Adrian ended her call. Legal is drafting the immunity agreement now. We'll have it ready by morning. In the meantime, I'm placing David on immediate suspension pending investigation. He'll run, Marcus said. No, he won't. His passport's already flagged. TSA will stop him at the airport. Adrian's smile was thin and sharp. He's not as smart as he thinks he is. Ethan stood. What about the money? Can we recover it? Most of it. The offshore accounts are frozen as of 10 minutes ago. We'll claw back what we can through legal channels. And the rest? Right off. Cost of doing business with a traitor. Marcus slumped in his chair. I'm sorry for all of this. Adrian looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. I know. It was past midnight when Ethan finally left the building. The city was quiet. Streetlights reflected off wet pavement from a rain he hadn't noticed starting. He sat in his truck, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. They'd done it, caught David, secured the evidence, protected the company. But the victory felt hollow. Because Marcus was right. His name would be public, his reputation destroyed, and no immunity deal could fix that. Ethan's phone buzzed, a text from Adrian. Go home, get some sleep. We have work to do tomorrow. He texted back. What work? We caught him. David was stealing. But he wasn't acting alone. Someone higher up knew. Someone who's still here. Ethan stared at the message. Then he typed slowly. How do you know? Because the money didn't just disappear. It went somewhere. And David isn't smart enough to hide it this well on his own. Ethan felt the exhaustion drain away, replaced by a familiar sharp focus. Who do you suspect? I don't know yet. But you're going to help me find out. He started the engine. The garage suddenly felt very far away. The next morning arrived too fast. Ethan dropped Mia at school, her backpack bouncing as she ran toward the entrance. She turned and waved. He waved back, forcing a smile. Love you, Bug, he called. Love you too, Dad. Then she was gone, swallowed by a stream of kids. Ethan sat in the parking lot, watching parents come and go. Normal people with normal problems. Not hunting thieves in glass towers. Not dismantling billion-dollar conspiracies. He thought about Sarah, what she would say if she could see him now. Probably something sarcastic about him always needing a project, always chasing patterns. But maybe she'd understand. Maybe she'd be proud. Or maybe she'd tell him he was an idiot for risking everything when Mia needed stability. He'd never know. Ethan drove to Voss Capital. The 23rd floor was chaos. Analysts moving between desks, security escorting someone out. Adrian's assistant fielding phone calls with the kind of professional panic that came from a PR nightmare unfolding in real time. Ethan walked into Adrian's office. She was on a conference call, gesturing sharply at someone on the screen. I don't care what the optics are. We're not making a statement until legal clears it. She ended the call and looked at Ethan. David's in custody. FBI picked him up an hour ago. Fast. I made calls. Adrian leaned back. He's not talking. Lawyered up immediately. Expected. But his files weren't encrypted as well as he thought. Forensic team pulled transaction records going back 3 years. Ethan sat down. And? David was moving money for someone else. The amounts he stole were significant, but the pattern suggests he was a middleman. The real beneficiary is buried under layers we haven't cracked yet. Show me. Adrienne turned her monitor. Ethan scanned the data. She was right. David's transactions followed a clear structure. Money came in from Voss Capital, got shuffled through the shell companies Marcus had set up, then moved again to a secondary layer of accounts David didn't control. Whoever's on the other end is getting 70%, Ethan said. David kept 30%. Which means David wasn't the mastermind. He was a hired hand. Ethan traced a pattern on the screen. These secondary accounts, where are they registered? We're still mapping it, but preliminary analysis suggests Eastern Europe, possibly Cyprus. Tax haven. Exactly. Ethan leaned back. So we have a ghost, someone with enough pull to recruit David, enough technical skill to build a laundering system, and enough discipline to stay invisible for 3 years. Can you find them? Ethan met her eyes. Maybe, but it's going to take time, and it's going to mean digging into places that might implicate people you trust. Everyone's a suspect until proven otherwise. Even you? Adrian's expression didn't change. Even me. For the next week, Ethan lived in the data. He cross-referenced employee records with transaction timelines, mapped access logs against fund transfers, built decision trees that traced every dollar to its source. Mia spent evenings at Marcus's house. His wife had been surprisingly understanding once Marcus explained everything, or maybe she was just too tired to be angry. Either way, it gave Ethan the space to work. He slept in Adrian's office some nights, on the couch, 2-3 hours at a time. Woke up to coffee she'd ordered and spreadsheets she'd pulled. They didn't talk much, just worked. 2 people chasing the same ghost for different reasons. On Thursday night, Ethan found it. Not the ghost, but the thread that would lead to them. A single email. Buried in David's deleted files. Recovered by forensics but overlooked because it looked like spam. Except it wasn't spam. It was a coded instruction. Simple substitution cipher. The kind you'd learn in an intro cryptography class. Ethan decoded it in 15 minutes. Phase 3 complete. Initiate Cyprus transfer. Confirm receipt by end of quarter. And it was signed with a single initial. R. Ethan stared at the screen. Then he pulled up Voss Capital's executive roster. 3 names started with R. Rachel Simmons, CFO, Richard Ortiz, VP of Operations, and Robert Voss, Adrian's father, founder of the company, retired 5 years ago but still on the board. Ethan felt his stomach drop. He stood and walked to Adrian's office. She was on the phone. He waited until she hung up. I found something, he said. She looked at him. Good news or bad news? Depends on your definition. He showed her the email, watched her face as she read it, watched the color drain. R, she said quietly. Yeah. It could be anyone. It could, but statistically it's one of 3 people. Adrian set the tablet down carefully. My father retired 5 years ago. He has no operational access. But he has board access, he has relationships. He knows every system in this building because he built half of them. He wouldn't do this. You said everyone's a suspect. Not him. Ethan sat down. I'm not accusing him. I'm following the data. And the data says someone with the initial R has been running this operation from the beginning. If it's not your father, we need to prove it. And if it is, it's not. Her voice was steel. But underneath, Ethan heard fear. Then let me investigate, he said gently. Let me clear his name. Adrian stared at him for a long time. Then she nodded once. Do it, but quietly. Ethan spent the next 2 days building a profile. He pulled Robert Voss's financial records, travel history, email communications, everything he could access without triggering alerts. And slowly, a picture emerged. Robert Voss had retired wealthy, but not extravagantly so. He lived comfortably, donated to charities, played golf twice a week. But 6 months ago, something changed. His spending increased. Not dramatically, but enough to notice. A new car, a vacation property in the Bahamas, investment accounts that suddenly showed significant deposits, and the timing matched the acceleration in David's transactions. Ethan sat back, rubbing his eyes. He didn't want it to be Robert, for Adrian's sake, for the company's sake. But the evidence didn't care what he wanted. He was about to pull more records when his phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Yeah? Mr. Cole? The voice was smooth, older, familiar from recordings he'd reviewed. Robert Voss. How did you get this number? Ethan asked carefully. I make it my business to know things, especially when someone is investigating me. Ethan's pulse quickened. Don't insult me with denials. You've been digging through my finances for 2 days. I have alerts on my accounts. Then you know what I found. I know what you think you found, but you're wrong. Prove it. Robert laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. Meet me. Tonight. I'll explain everything. Where? The original Voss Capital office, before we moved downtown. The building's abandoned now, but I still have keys. 9th floor, 9 p.m. Why there? Because I'm sentimental, and because I don't trust my own daughter's building anymore. Robert paused. Come alone. If you bring security, I disappear, and you'll never know the truth. The line went dead. Ethan stared at his phone. Every instinct screamed trap. But Robert was right. This was the only way to know for sure. He looked at the time. 6:47 p.m. He had 2 hours to decide if he was walking into a confession or an ambush. Ethan didn't tell Adrian about the call. He told himself it was because he needed to verify the facts before involving her. That dragging her into a confrontation with her father without proof would be cruel. That he was protecting her. But the truth was simpler and uglier. He didn't trust what she'd do if she knew. Didn't trust that she wouldn't try to stop him or warn Robert or collapse under the weight of what her father might have done. So he lied by omission. Told her he was going home early to check on Mia. Watched her nod distractedly, already buried in damage control calls with the board. Then he drove across town to a neighborhood that used to matter. The old Voss Capitol building stood like a monument to ambition that had outgrown its foundation. 12 stories of concrete and glass, windows dark, a faded sign still visible above the entrance. The surrounding blocks had gentrified around it, coffee shops and boutiques filling spaces that used to be warehouses, but the building itself remained untouched, abandoned. Ethan parked on the street. The area was quiet, a few people walking dogs, a jogger passing under streetlights. He checked his phone. 8:54 p.m. He thought about calling someone. Marcus, maybe. Or leaving a message for Adrian explaining where he'd gone in case things went wrong. Instead, he pocketed the phone and walked to the entrance. The front doors were locked, but one had a gap where the seal had degraded. Ethan pulled hard, and it scraped open. Inside, the lobby smelled like mold and old carpet. Emergency exit signs provided the only light, casting everything in dim red. Elevator banks stood dark and dead. Ethan found the stairwell and started climbing. His footsteps echoed. The air grew stuffier with each floor. By the 7th floor, he was breathing hard, and by the 9th, his shirt stuck to his back with sweat. The stairwell door to the 9th floor was propped open with a brick. Ethan stepped through into a hallway lined with empty offices. Doors hung open. Desks and chairs sat scattered like someone had left in a hurry and never came back. Dust covered everything. Light spilled from a corner office at the end of the hall. Ethan walked toward it slowly. His hand brushed his pocket where his phone sat. He thought about the recording app, thought about turning it on. He didn't. The office door was open. Robert Voss sat behind a desk that looked like it had been there since the 90s. Wood veneer peeling, a cracked leather chair. Behind him, floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city lights. Robert looked exactly like his photos. Mid-60s, gray hair combed back, sharp suit even in an abandoned building, the kind of man who wore authority like a second skin. He gestured to a chair across from him. Mr. Cole, thank you for coming. Ethan sat but didn't relax. You said you'd explain, and I will. But first, a question. How much has my daughter told you about how this company started? Not much, and I'm not here for a history lesson. Robert smiled faintly. Indulge me. It's relevant. Ethan said nothing. Robert leaned back. I started Voss Capital 32 years ago with money I borrowed from people who don't advertise their lending services. The kind who expect repayment with interest that compounds daily. I was 28, arrogant, convinced I could beat the market. Did you? For a while. Made enough to pay back the loan, build a client base, hire staff. But the market has a way of humbling you. 5 years in, I made a series of bad calls, lost everything. The company should have folded, but it didn't. No, because I found a partner, someone with capital and connections. They bailed me out, invested heavily, helped me rebuild. Robert's eyes were steady on Ethan's, but that kind of help comes with strings. What kind of strings? The kind that never go away. The kind where you owe someone forever, and they collect in ways that aren't always legal. Ethan felt his jaw tighten. You're saying you've been laundering money for someone since the beginning. I'm saying I made a deal when I was desperate, and that deal defined everything that came after. That's not an excuse. I didn't offer it as one. Robert stood and walked to the window. When Adrienne was old enough, I tried to keep her separate from it, built legitimate divisions, clean revenue streams. I wanted her to inherit a company that didn't carry my debts. Clearly that didn't work. Robert turned. No, because the partner I mentioned. They've been patient, but patience has limits. 3 years ago, they wanted a return on their decades of investment, wanted access to the offshore accounts, wanted me to expand the operation. And you said yes. I said no. Robert's voice hardened. I told them I was done, that I'd built something real and I wasn't going to destroy it. So they went around you. They recruited David Brennan, offered him more money than I ever could, used him to build exactly what I'd refused to create. Ethan studied Robert's face, looking for tells, signs of deception. But the old man's expression was steady, tired but steady. If that's true, Ethan said slowly, why not come forward? Why not tell Adrienne? Because the people I owe don't forgive betrayal, and because I wasn't sure who I could trust inside the company. David had access to everything. If he was working for them, who else was? So you stayed quiet and let your daughter's company bleed money. Robert's jaw tightened. I've been trying to trace it myself, quietly, but I'm not an analyst anymore. I'm an old man with outdated skills. You could have hired someone. I did. I hired you. Ethan blinked. What? Robert sat back down. Marcus Chen, old friend of yours. I've known Marcus for years. He mentioned you once, said you were brilliant but wasted in a garage. So when I needed someone outside the company, someone David wouldn't see coming, I suggested Marcus invite you to that networking event. The pieces clicked into place. The casual invitation, the convenient timing, Marcus's insistence that Ethan needed to get out. You set me up, Ethan said quietly. I gave you an opportunity. What you did with it was your choice. And Marcus? Did he know? That you were being evaluated? No, he thought he was doing a friend a favor. Robert leaned forward. But you exceeded every expectation. Dismantled Adrienne's presentation, exposed Helix, found David's operation in less than 2 weeks. You're exactly what I needed. Ethan stood. I'm not working for you. You already are. You just didn't know it. I work for Adrienne. Adrienne works for the company I built, which means ultimately you work for me. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. This entire conversation is you trying to manipulate me into cleaning up your mess without implicating yourself. This entire conversation is me trying to save my daughter's company from people who'll burn it to the ground if they think I've betrayed them. Then tell her the truth. I can't. Robert's voice cracked slightly. Because if I do, she'll try to fight them, and they'll kill her for it. The words hung in the air like smoke. Ethan sat back down slowly. Who are they? Does it matter? Yeah, it does. Robert was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. Organized crime, old connections from Eastern Europe, Bratva adjacent but not officially affiliated. They've been laundering money through legitimate businesses for decades. I was just one avenue. And now they want more. They always want more. Ethan thought about the Cyprus accounts, the layers of shell companies, the sophistication of the operation. It fit. Criminal organizations with that kind of capital and patience didn't make mistakes. They made investments. How much do they have inside Voss Capital? Ethan asked. I don't know. David was their point man, but he wasn't senior enough to see the full structure. There are others, I'm sure of it. You have names? Suspicions? Nothing concrete. Give them to me. Robert pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and slid it across the desk. Ethan opened it. 3 names, 2 he didn't recognize. 1 he did. Rachel Simmons, CFO. Rachel's been with Adrienne for 8 years, Ethan said. I know. You think she's compromised? I think she's made financial decisions that don't make sense unless someone's influencing her. Investments in firms with no track record. Acquisitions that lose money. She's either incompetent or complicit. Ethan folded the paper and pocketed it. If I find proof she's working with them, what happens? You bring it to me first. Before Adrienne, before anyone. Why? Because if you expose them publicly, they'll retaliate. Not against the company, against Adrienne personally. These people don't do halfway measures. Ethan felt cold. You're asking me to help you cover this up. I'm asking you to help me dismantle it carefully, surgically, so my daughter survives. And what about justice? What about the people they've hurt? Robert's expression hardened. Justice is a luxury. Survival isn't. Ethan stood again. This time he walked to the window, staring out at the city. Lights everywhere. Lives happening in all those buildings. People who had no idea what happened in rooms like this. Deals made in shadows. Compromises that rotted foundations from the inside. He thought about Adrienne, about the exhaustion in her eyes, the weight she carried trying to hold her company together. And he thought about Mia, about the promise he'd made, that she came first. Always. Getting involved in organized crime investigations wasn't putting her first. It was painting a target on both their backs. But walking away meant letting corruption win. Meant letting people like David and Rachel and whoever else was buried in Voss Capital keep stealing, keep destroying. Ethan turned back to Robert. I need proof, not suspicions, actual evidence that Rachel or anyone else is working with these people. You'll have it. How? Robert reached into his desk and pulled out a USB drive. Security footage from my personal archives. Shows Rachel meeting with a known associate of the organization. 3 different occasions over the past year. Ethan took the drive. Why didn't you use this already? Because footage proves contact, not intent. I need you to find the financial connections, the transactions that tie her to the money. And if I do, then we use it as leverage. Force her to cooperate. Get her to give up the others. Ethan pocketed the drive. This doesn't mean I trust you. I don't need your trust. I need your competence. What happens when Adrienne finds out you've been lying to her for 30 years? Robert's face softened for the first time. She'll hate me, but she'll be alive to do it. Ethan walked toward the door, stopped. One more thing. The partner you mentioned, the one who started all this, are they still active? Robert nodded. Very. Do they know about me? Not yet, but they will eventually. These people are thorough. Then I'm running out of time. We both are. Ethan left without another word, descended the stairs faster than he'd climbed them, got to his truck and sat in the driver's seat, hands shaking. He pulled out the USB drive, turned it over in his fingers. Everything Robert had said could be a lie, an elaborate manipulation to control the investigation, to protect himself. Or it could be the truth. A desperate father trying to save his daughter from consequences he'd set in motion decades ago. Ethan didn't know which was worse. He drove home, checked on Mia. She was asleep, blankets tangled around her legs. He straightened them gently, kissed her forehead. Then he went to his garage workshop and plugged in the USB drive. The footage was grainy but clear enough, dated timestamps in the corner. Rachel Simmons sitting in a cafe with a man Ethan didn't recognize. Conversation too distant for audio, but body language spoke volumes. Money changing hands in one clip, documents in another. The third video showed them in a parking garage, Rachel handing over a laptop, the man checking it, nodding, walking away. Ethan ran facial recognition on the man using open-source tools, Got a hit within 10 minutes. Alexei Volkov, known associate of Eastern European organized crime, multiple arrests, no convictions. Currently flagged by Interpol but operating freely. Ethan leaned back, exhaled slowly. Robert hadn't been lying, at least not about this, which meant Rachel Simmons was dirty. And if Rachel was dirty, the infection went deeper than David Brennan, deeper than anyone had suspected. He spent the next 6 hours building a case, transaction records, travel logs, communication patterns. By dawn, he had a profile that would hold up in court. Rachel had been siphoning money for at least 2 years, smaller amounts than David, but more consistent. And unlike David, she'd been careful, never greedy, just steady. The kind of theft that could go unnoticed for decades if no one was looking. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Adrienne. "Where are you? We need to talk." He checked the time. 6:47 a.m. He'd worked through the night without noticing. He texted back, "On my way." 30 minutes later, he walked into Adrienne's office. She was already dressed for the day, coffee in hand, but her eyes were bloodshot. "You look terrible," she said. "Didn't sleep." "Join the club." She gestured at a chair. "The board met last night. Emergency session. They want answers about David, about the losses, about what happens next." "What did you tell them?" "That we're conducting a full audit, that criminal charges are pending, that we'll recover what we can." She set down her coffee. "They want your report by end of week." "I'll have it." "That's not why I called you in." Adrienne's expression shifted, harder. "I got a call this morning from my father." Ethan's stomach dropped. "He said you met with him last night, that he gave you information." Her eyes locked on his. "Is that true?" Ethan could lie, play ignorant, but Adrienne was too smart for that, and he was too tired. "Yes." Her jaw tightened. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to verify what he said before involving you. He's my father. Anything involving him involves me. He asked me to come alone." "And you just went? To an abandoned building with a man who might be complicit in fraud?" Adrienne stood. "That's not careful. That's reckless." "I got results." "I don't care about results. I care that you went behind my back." The words hit harder than Ethan expected, because she was right. He had gone behind her back, had made decisions that affected her without consulting her, just like everyone else in her life apparently did. "You're right," he said quietly. "I should have told you." Adrienne blinked, like she'd expected an argument and got an apology instead. She sat back down slowly. "What did he tell you?" Ethan pulled out the USB drive, set it on her desk. "That you have another problem, bigger than David." He explained everything: Robert's confession, the organized crime connections, Rachel's involvement, the footage. Adrienne listened in silence. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. "My father has been lying to me for 30 years, she said finally. "Built this company on laundered money. Let criminals use it as a front." "He said he was trying to protect you." "By lying?" "By keeping you separate from it." Adrienne laughed bitterly. "And how'd that work out?" Ethan didn't answer. She stood and walked to the window, stared out at the city waking up. "Rachel's been my CFO for 8 years. I trusted her, promoted her, gave her access to everything." "I know." "Do you? Do you know what it's like to realize everyone around you has been using you, that your entire company might be built on a foundation of crime?" "No, but I know what it's like to lose everything and have to rebuild." Adrienne turned. "This is different." "Is it? You still have choices. You can burn it all down and start over, or you can cut out the rot and save what's real." "What if there's nothing real left to save?" Ethan stood, walked over to her. "Then you build something new, but you don't quit. Not while you can still fight." She looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time since he'd met her, Adrienne Voss looked vulnerable. Not weak, but human. "I don't know if I can do this," she said quietly. "You can. I've watched you hold this company together through crisis after crisis. You're stronger than you think." "I'm exhausted." "I know. I want to walk away." "But you won't." She smiled slightly. "How do you know?" Because walking away isn't who you are. Adrienne was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. Okay, what's the play? Ethan pointed at the USB drive. We confront Rachel, show her the footage, offer her a deal. She cooperates, gives us names. We don't destroy her publicly. And if she refuses? Then we go to the FBI with everything and let them burn it all down. Adrienne picked up the drive, turned it over in her hands. When? Today, before she has time to run. She doesn't know we're on to her. Your father thinks she might. Said these people are thorough. Adrienne's expression hardened. Then we move now. Rachel Simmons arrived at the office at 9:15 a.m. Ethan watched from Adrienne's office as she walked through the floor, nodding at colleagues, coffee in hand. She looked normal, composed, like someone who wasn't stealing millions. Adrienne called her in at 9:30. Rachel entered with a professional smile. Morning. What's up? Sit, Adrienne said. The smile faltered slightly. Rachel glanced at Ethan. Is everything okay? That depends on your definition. Adrienne gestured at the chair. Rachel sat slowly. Her eyes moved between them, reading the room. Ethan pulled up the first video on the monitor. Hit play. Rachel's face drained of color. That's you, Adrienne said. Meeting with Alexei Volkov. Known criminal. 3 separate occasions. Rachel's mouth opened, closed. I can explain. Please do. He's a client. Volkov doesn't have accounts with Voss Capital. Private consulting. Outside work. Adrienne leaned forward. Try again. Rachel's composure cracked. Adrienne, you don't understand. Then help me understand, because from where I'm sitting, my CFO has been meeting with organized crime, passing documents, taking money, and I'd really like to know why. Rachel's hands shook. She looked at Ethan. This is your fault. You started digging into things you shouldn't have. Answer the question, Ethan said calmly. Rachel turned back to Adrienne. They approached me 2 years ago, said they had information about irregularities in our books, threatened to go public unless I cooperated. Blackmail. Yes. What did they have on you? Rachel's voice broke. I made some bad investments. Personal accounts. Lost everything. I borrowed from company funds to cover it, just temporarily. I was going to pay it back. Adrienne's expression was stone. How much? 200,000. And they found out. Rachel nodded, tears streaming now. They said they'd expose me, destroy my career, send me to prison, unless I helped them. Helped them how? Moved money, small amounts, approved transactions that looked legitimate on paper. Ethan pulled up a file on the tablet. These transactions, over $2 million in 18 months, that's not small. Rachel sobbed. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, Adrienne said coldly. You just made the wrong one. Please, I have kids. A mortgage. If this comes out, it's already out. The question now is whether you cooperate or face this alone. Rachel looked up, mascara streaking her face. What do you want? Names. Everyone inside this company, working with them. Every transaction you facilitated. Full cooperation. If I talk, they'll kill me. If you don't talk, you'll go to prison for the rest of your life. Choose. Rachel covered her face with her hands. Her shoulders shook. Then, slowly, she nodded. Okay, I'll tell you everything. Rachel talked for 3 hours. She gave them names, transaction codes, meeting locations, everything she'd been holding on to for 2 years out of fear and shame. Adrienne's assistant transcribed every word while Ethan cross-referenced details against the data he'd already compiled. By noon, they had a map. Not complete, but clear enough to see the scope. 5 people inside Voss Capital were compromised. David Brennan and Rachel were the primary operators, but 3 others had facilitated transactions without fully understanding what they were enabling. Junior analysts who'd approved unusual transfers because their superiors told them to. Who'd ignored red flags because questioning orders felt more dangerous than following them. The organization behind it all remained mostly hidden, but Rachel gave them one critical piece of information that changed everything. There's a meeting, she said, voice hoarse from crying. Once a quarter. Volkov brings someone higher up. They review the books, Make sure everything's running smooth. Adrienne leaned forward. When's the next one? Friday, 3 days from now. Where? Rachel hesitated. If I tell you, they'll know I talked. They're going to know anyway, Ethan said. The question is whether you help us catch them or wait for them to come after you. Rachel closed her eyes. The Maritime Building, Waterfront District, 12th floor. There's an old law office they use as a front, 2 p.m. Adrienne looked at Ethan. He could see her thinking, calculating. We bring in the FBI, she said. Set up a sting. Catch them all at once. Ethan shook his head. That gives them 3 days to disappear. The moment we involve federal agents, someone leaks. Someone always leaks. Then what do you suggest? We go ourselves. Record everything. Get proof of the meeting and who attends. Then we hand it to the FBI with a complete case. That's insane. These are criminals, violent ones. Which is why we don't go in. We plant surveillance, remote cameras, audio equipment. We watch from a safe distance and document everything. Adrienne turned to Rachel. How many people usually attend these meetings? Volkov and one other, sometimes two, and whoever from our side is reporting. Who reports? Rachel's voice dropped to almost a whisper. David used to. Now that he's arrested, I don't know who they'll send. Ethan felt pieces clicking into place. They'll send someone senior, someone with access to the full picture, someone they trust. Adrienne's face went pale. You think they'll call my father, but he said they recruited David when he refused to expand the operation. But that doesn't mean they cut him loose. They might see this as an opportunity to pull him back in. He won't go. Are you sure? Adrienne didn't answer. They spent the rest of the day planning. Adrienne contacted a private security firm that specialized in corporate espionage. Ethan worked with their tech team to source equipment. Cameras small enough to hide in ceiling tiles. Audio transmitters that looked like electrical outlets. Everything they'd need to turn the 12th floor of the Maritime Building into a surveillance net. Rachel stayed in Adrienne's office under guard. Not arrested, but not free. She'd cooperated, but trust was a luxury none of them could afford. At 6 p.m., Ethan's phone rang. Mia's school. His stomach dropped. Hello? Mr. Cole, this is Principal Andrews. Mia's fine, but we need you to come pick her up. What happened? She got into an altercation with another student. Nothing serious, but our policy requires parent pickup when there's a physical incident. Ethan closed his eyes. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He found Mia sitting outside the principal's office, arms crossed, face red. A bruise was forming on her cheek. Ethan knelt in front of her. Bug, what happened? Tyler said you were a loser, that you fix cars because you're too stupid to do anything else. Ethan's jaw tightened. So you hit him? He hit me first. Mia, I'm not sorry. Her eyes were fierce, wet but fierce. He doesn't get to talk about you like that. Principal Andrews appeared in the doorway. Mr. Cole, a word. Ethan stood, followed her into the office while Mia waited outside. Tyler's parents are considering pressing charges, Andrews said carefully, for a schoolyard fight between 7-year-olds. Tyler has a split lip, and Mia's been having behavioral issues lately, outbursts, difficulty focusing. She's a kid dealing with a lot. I understand, but we have protocols. Andrews softened slightly. Is everything okay at home? Ethan thought about the last 2 weeks, the late nights, the obsession with patterns and data, the way he'd barely been present even when he was physically there. We're managing, he said. Mia mentioned you've been working a lot. Different job than usual. Temporary consulting work. Is it taking time away from her? The question landed like an accusation, because it was true. He'd promised Mia she came first. But here he was, chasing criminals and building cases while his daughter got into fights defending his honor. I'll handle it, Ethan said quietly. I hope so. Because Mia's a good kid, but she needs stability right now more than she needs you to prove anything to anyone. The words followed Ethan home. He and Mia drove in silence. At a red light, he glanced over at her. Does it hurt? He asked, gesturing at her cheek. A little. I'm proud of you for defending me, but hitting isn't the answer. What is? Ethan thought about it. Being so good at what you do that people's words don't matter. Mia looked at him. Is that what you're doing? With the new job? Yeah, I guess it is. Then why do you look sad all the time? The question caught him off guard. I'm not sad. You do the thinking too hard face. All the time now. Ethan sighed. I'm working on something important, but it's complicated. More important than me? No. Never. He reached over and squeezed her hand. You're the most important thing in the world. I'm sorry if I made you feel like you weren't. Mia was quiet for a moment. Then, are you going to keep doing it? The consulting? I don't know yet. If you do, can you still come to my soccer game Saturday? Ethan's chest tightened. He'd forgotten about the game. Of course. I wouldn't miss it. Promise? Promise. That night, after Mia went to bed, Ethan sat in his garage staring at case files spread across his workbench. Transaction records, surveillance footage, organizational charts mapping the corruption inside Voss Capital. His phone buzzed. A text from Adrienne. The equipment's ready. We install tomorrow night. He typed back, Okay. You don't have to do this. I can hire professionals. I'm already in. Might as well see it through. What about your daughter? Ethan looked at the text for a long time. Then he called her instead of typing. She answered on the second ring. You okay? Mia got in a fight today, defending me. Adrienne was quiet. Is she all right? Bruised, angry, asking questions I don't have good answers for. About whether I'm putting work before her, about whether this is worth it. Is it? Ethan leaned back. I don't know anymore. 2 weeks ago I was invisible. Nobody. Just a mechanic raising his kid. Now I'm investigating organized crime and planning stings and barely sleeping. And for what? To make things right. Whose things? Your company? Your father's mistakes? These aren't my problems, Adrienne. No, they're not. Her voice was quiet. And I'm sorry I dragged you into them. You didn't drag me. I walked in. You can walk out. I wouldn't blame you. Ethan thought about it, really thought about it. Walking away would be easy, smart even. Go back to the garage. Pick up Mia from school on time. Show up to soccer games and parent-teacher conferences. Be present. But the pattern wouldn't let go. The data, the crime still happening, the people still being hurt. And underneath it all, something else. The part of him that had been dormant for 5 years. The part that was good at this. That mattered. I'm seeing it through, he said finally. But after Friday, I'm done. Back to my regular life. Okay, and I need something from you. What? Saturday? Mia has a soccer game, 2 p.m. I need to be there. You will be. I mean it, Adrienne. Whatever happens Friday, I walk away in time to make that game. No excuses. I promise, no matter what. They hung up. Ethan sat in the silence of his garage, surrounded by tools and case files and the ghost of who he used to be. Thursday night, they installed the surveillance equipment. The Maritime building was older than the Voss Capital Tower, but better maintained. The security guard recognized Adrienne and waved them through without questions. They took the elevator to the 12th floor. The old law office was exactly as Rachel had described. Dusty reception area, conference room with a table that seated 12, windows overlooking the water. Ethan's team worked efficiently. Cameras in the ceiling vents, audio transmitters in the light fixtures. Everything wireless, everything encrypted. Within 2 hours, the room was wired. They tested the feeds from a van parked 3 blocks away. Crystal clear video. Audio that picked up whispers. We're set, the tech lead said. Adrienne nodded. Good. Now we wait. Friday arrived cloudy and cold. Ethan dropped Mia at school early. She hugged him tight before running inside. See you at the game tomorrow, she called back. Wouldn't miss it, he promised. At the office, tension hummed through every floor. Word had spread that something was happening, though no one knew exactly what. Rachel had been quietly placed on administrative leave. The junior analysts were being interviewed by legal. The board was demanding updates hourly. Adrienne looked like she hadn't slept in days. Probably hadn't. You should rest, Ethan said when he found her in the office at noon. I'll rest when this is over. You'll collapse before then. Probably. She smiled weakly. but I'll collapse later. At 1:30 p.m., they loaded into the surveillance van. Ethan, Adrian, 2 security personnel, and the tech lead. They parked in the lot behind the Maritime building with a clear view of the entrance. Ethan pulled up the camera feeds on his laptop. The conference room was empty. Waiting. What if no one shows? Adrian asked. They'll show. Rachel said these meetings are non-negotiable. Rachel also said she didn't know who'd be reporting now that David's arrested. We'll find out soon enough. At 1:47 p.m., a black sedan pulled up. 2 men got out. Ethan recognized one immediately from the footage. Alexei Volkov. The other man was older, heavier, wearing an expensive coat. They entered the building. 3 minutes later, they appeared on the conference room feed. Volkov sat at the head of the table, the other man beside him. Who's that? Adrian asked. Ethan zoomed in. Ran facial recognition. Got a hit. Dmitry Kuznetsov. Interpol has him flagged for racketeering and money laundering. He's the one calling the shots. Then we have him on camera. That's enough. Not yet. We need them discussing the operation, admitting to the fraud. They waited. The audio picked up small talk. Weather, traffic, nothing useful. At 2:03 p.m., the conference room door opened again. Robert Voss walked in. Adrian gasped. No. Robert looked older in person than on camera. Tired. He sat across from Dmitry and folded his hands on the table. Gentlemen, he said, let's make this quick. Dmitry smiled. It wasn't friendly. Having second thoughts about our arrangement, Robert. I've had second thoughts for 30 years. But here we are. Here we are indeed. Your organization has been sloppy lately. David's arrest, the internal investigation, it's drawing attention we don't need. David was your man, not mine. David was convenient, like you. Robert's jaw tightened. What do you want? Assurance that the remaining channels stay open, that the investigation stops before it reaches us. I can't control my daughter. Then control who she listens to. This mechanic she hired, Cole, he's problematic. Ethan felt ice in his veins. Adrian grabbed his arm. They know about you. On screen, Robert's expression didn't change. Cole's just a consultant, 2-week contract. He's done after today. Make sure of it, or we'll make sure for you. The threat hung in the air. Robert stood. Are we done? One more thing. Dmitry pulled out a folder. These are projections for next quarter. We need these amounts moved through the same channels, clean and quiet. Robert took the folder without opening it. Fine. And Robert, don't make us remind you what happens when people become unreliable. Robert left without responding. Adrian was shaking beside Ethan. He's still working with them, after everything he told you, after claiming he wanted to protect me. Ethan rewound the footage, watched Robert's face again, looking for tells, signs of deception or fear. And then he saw it, so subtle he almost missed it. When Robert took the folder, his hand brushed his jacket pocket, a gesture so small it looked natural. But Ethan recognized it, the same gesture he'd made Thursday night when activating his own recording device. He's wearing a wire, Ethan said. What? Ethan pointed at the screen. Look, right there. He just activated something. He's recording this. Why would he? Because he's building his own case, has been all along. Ethan pulled up audio analysis, isolated Robert's position in the room, and there it was, a faint electronic hum that hadn't been there before Robert arrived. Adrian stared at the screen. My father's been working against them this whole time. Or he's covering his tracks, making himself look cooperative while gathering evidence. On screen, Volkov and Dmitry continued talking, discussing amounts, routes, the mechanics of laundering millions, everything they'd need for prosecution. And then Dmitry said something that made Ethan's blood run cold. One more loose end, the CFO, Rachel Simmons. She's been interviewed by Voss's legal team. We need to ensure she doesn't become a problem. Volkov nodded. I'll handle it. Make it quiet. Adrian grabbed her phone, started dialing. Who are you calling? Ethan asked. Rachel's in protective custody at a safe house. If they're planning to, her phone rang before she could finish. Unknown number. She answered on speaker. Ms. Voss? It was Rachel's voice, terrified. They have my daughter. They took her from school. They said if I testify, I'll never see her again. Adrian's face went white. Where are you? At home. They told me to stay here, to wait for instructions. Don't move, we're sending security. They said no police, no security, just me. Rachel, listen to me. The line went dead. Ethan was already moving. We need to get her out of there. They're using her daughter as leverage. If we spook them, if we don't move now, they kill them both anyway. Ethan looked at the security team. You know where Rachel lives? Yes. How fast can we get there? 15 minutes. Do it! The van lurched into motion. Adrienne was on her phone coordinating with her security team, with legal, trying to reach Rachel again. Nothing. Just voicemail. Ethan pulled up the surveillance feed one more time. The conference room was empty now. Dmitry and Volkov had left, but the recording was complete. Everything they'd said, every admission, every threat, they had them. Now they just had to keep Rachel alive long enough to use it. Rachel's house was in a quiet suburb 20 minutes outside the city. By the time they arrived, 2 other security vehicles were already there, personnel positioned around the perimeter. The front door was unlocked. Ethan went in first, security flanking him. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Living room untouched, kitchen clean, mail stacked neatly on the counter like any other day. They cleared the first floor. Nothing. Upstairs, they found Rachel in her bedroom, sitting on the bed, staring at her phone. Her hands were shaking so badly the device kept slipping. She looked up when they entered. Red eyes. Makeup smeared. They haven't called back. Where's your daughter? Adriana asked, keeping her voice steady. I don't know. They just said they had her. Sent me a photo. Rachel showed them her phone. A picture of a little girl, maybe 9 years old, sitting in a car. Scared but unharmed. Tears on her cheeks. Ethan took the phone, zoomed in on the background. Street signs, building reflections. This was taken in a parking lot. Can you see any landmarks? Rachel squinted at the screen, desperate for anything familiar. That sign. That's the grocery store near her school. How long ago? 20 minutes, maybe less. Her voice cracked. They said they'd call. They said if I cooperated. We're going to find her, Ethan said. But I need you to focus. Did they say anything else? Any sounds in the background? Traffic? Voices? Rachel closed her eyes, trying to remember through panic. A train. I heard a train whistle when they called. Ethan handed the phone to one of the security guys. Run geolocation on this photo. Cross-reference with train routes near that grocery store. While they worked, Adrienne sat beside Rachel, put a hand on her shoulder. Did they say what they wanted? For me to recant everything. Say I made it up. That I was trying to frame David because of a personal grudge. Rachel looked at her with desperate eyes. I don't care about immunity. I don't care about jail. I just want my daughter safe. We'll get her back. You can't promise that. No, but we can try like hell. The security tech looked up from his laptop. Got something. The photo metadata shows it was taken at the Riverside Mall, north parking structure, 3rd level based on the angle. Ethan stood. How far? 10 minutes if we push it. Then push it. They left 2 security personnel with Rachel and loaded back into the vehicles. Ethan rode with Adrienne, both of them silent as the van wove through traffic. At a red light, she spoke quietly. If we get her daughter back, Rachel testifies. We have enough to put them away for decades. And if we don't? Then none of this matters. Adrienne's jaw was tight. A 9-year-old girl doesn't deserve to be a casualty in our war. No one deserves that. The Riverside Mall was massive. 4 levels of parking, hundreds of cars glinting in the afternoon sun. They split up, security teams sweeping each level while Ethan and Adrienne monitored from the van. Ethan's radio crackled. 3rd level, northwest corner, got a black sedan, matches the reflection in the photo. 2 occupants, adult male, driver's seat, child in back. Ethan grabbed the radio. Do not approach. I repeat, do not approach. Hold position and observe. They moved the van closer, parked 2 rows away with a clear line of sight to the sedan. Inside, Ethan could see a man in the driver's seat, thick neck, shaved head, phone pressed to his ear, and in the back, Rachel's daughter, small, terrified, hands zip-tied in front of her. We need police, Adrienne said. No time. The moment they see cops, this turns into a hostage situation. Could go wrong in 100 ways. Then what? Ethan studied the sedan, the man's body language, the way he kept checking his mirrors. Professional. Alert. Not someone who'd panic easily. We create a distraction, Ethan said. Something big enough to pull him out. When he leaves the car, we grab the girl and run. That's insane. You have a better idea? She didn't. Ethan looked at the security team lead. Can you disable the car remotely, kill the engine? If it's newer than 2015 and we can get the VIN, yeah. Give me a minute. While he worked, Ethan studied the parking structure, exit points, sight lines, escape routes. His mind was already running scenarios, success rates, risk factors, all of them bad. Got it, the tech said. 2018 model, engine control module is accessible. I can shut it down remotely. Do it, but wait for my signal. Ethan turned to the security team. When the engine dies, he'll get out to check. That's your window. 2 of you approach from behind, fast and quiet. Restrain him before he can react. The rest of you cover the exits in case there are others. What about the girl? I'll get her. Adrian grabbed his arm. Ethan, I'm the only one here who's not armed. She's already terrified. Seeing guns will make it worse. He met her eyes. Trust me. She hesitated, then nodded. Ethan took a breath, looked at the tech. Kill the engine, now. The sedan's motor cut out. Inside, the man's head jerked up. He tried the ignition. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. He said something into his phone, then opened the door and stepped out, leaving it ajar. The security team moved like shadows, 2 from behind, one hand over his mouth, the other yanking his arm back. He went down hard, face against the pavement, before he could make a sound. Ethan ran to the sedan, opened the back door. Rachel's daughter stared at him with eyes too wide, too scared. Hey, Ethan said softly. My name's Ethan. I'm a friend of your mom's. She sent me to bring you home. The girl didn't move. I know you're scared, but you're safe now. I promise. He held out his hand. Come on, let's get you out of here. She looked at his hand, at the security team restraining the man, at the open door. Then she took his hand. Ethan lifted her out of the car, pulled a knife from his pocket and cut the zip ties. She rubbed her wrists, and then without warning, she wrapped her arms around his neck and started crying. It's okay, he said quietly. You're okay. He carried her to the van. Adrienne had the door open, arms reaching to help. You're safe, Adrienne said, her voice gentle. We're taking you to your mom right now. Behind them, the security team had the man face down on the concrete. One of them was on the phone with local police. Another was photographing the scene. Ethan set the girl down in the van. Adrienne wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. What's your name? Adrienne asked. Sophie, the girl whispered. Sophie. That's a beautiful name. Your mom is waiting for you. She's been so worried. Sophie nodded, tears still streaming. Ethan walked back to where the man was restrained, crouched down beside him. Who sent you? The man spat, blood mixed with saliva. You're dead, all of you. Maybe, but right now you're the one in handcuffs. Ethan leaned closer. Last chance. Who gave the order? The man's expression wavered, just for a second. Then he looked away. Volkov. Said it was a collection job. Didn't tell me it was a kid until I showed up. Where were you supposed to take her? Warehouse. East Side, near the old docks. Just supposed to hold her there until they called with next steps. Ethan stood, pulled out his phone and called the FBI contact Adrienne had been working with, Agent Teresa Fuentes. She answered on the first ring. This is Cole. We have a situation. He gave her everything, the location, the man in custody, the warehouse on the east side, the recordings from the Maritime building, all of it. We're mobilizing now, Fuentes said. Do not approach that warehouse. Do you understand? We'll handle it. Understood. And Cole? Good work. We've been after Kuznetsov for 5 years. This might finally stick. They hung up. Ethan walked back to the van where Sophie was wrapped in the blanket, Adrienne sitting beside her. FBI's on the way, Ethan said. Adrienne nodded. Let's get her home. The drive back to Rachel's house felt longer than it was. Sophie stayed quiet, staring out the window. Ethan watched her in the rear-view mirror, saw the way her hands gripped the blanket, the way she jumped at sudden sounds. Trauma didn't announce itself with sirens. It just settled in. Made a home in your nervous system. He knew that better than anyone. When they pulled up to Rachel's house, she was standing in the doorway. The moment she saw the van, she ran. Adrienne opened the door and Sophie jumped out, running straight into her mother's arms. They collapsed on the lawn, both of them sobbing, holding each other like if they let go the world would tear them apart again. Ethan stayed in the van, watching, feeling something tight in his chest. Adrienne walked over to him. "You did good. We got lucky." Luck is what you make of it. They stood there for a moment. Then Adrienne's phone rang. She answered, listened. Her expression shifted. "They raided the warehouse," she said. "Found 3 more girls, different families, all leverage for different operations." She looked at Ethan. "You didn't just save Sophie. You saved them all." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. The FBI took statements, arrested the man from the parking garage, promised protection for Rachel and Sophie while they built the case against Dmitry and Volkov. Adrienne handed over everything. The surveillance footage, the recordings Robert had made, the financial data, all of it. And then it was done. The sun was setting as Ethan drove home. He texted Mia from a red light. "Love you, Bug. See you in the morning." She texted back immediately. "Love you too. Don't forget the game tomorrow." Ethan smiled. "I won't. Promise." Saturday was bright and clear, perfect soccer weather. Ethan sat in the bleachers with the other parents, watching Mia run across the field. She wasn't the fastest, wasn't the most coordinated, but she was trying, smiling, being a kid. And that was everything. At halftime, she ran over, grass-stained and breathless. "You came." "Of course I came." "Are you done with the consulting?" "Yeah, all done." "Good." She hugged him. "I missed you." "I missed you too." The game resumed. Mia scored a goal in the second half. Nothing fancy, a defender's mistake that bounced her way. But she lit up like she'd won the championship. Ethan cheered louder than anyone. After the game, as they walked to the parking lot, Adrienne called. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Hey." "Hey, you at the game?" "Just finished. Mia scored." "That's great." Adrienne paused. "I wanted to thank you for everything." "You already did." "No. I thanked you for the work. I'm thanking you for showing me what integrity looks like, for not giving up even when I wanted to." Ethan watched Mia ahead of him, showing her trophy to another parent. "You would have figured it out." "Maybe. But it would have taken longer, cost more." Another pause. "The board met this morning. They want to offer you a permanent position, head of risk analysis, full benefits, salary that actually reflects what you're worth. We're talking 6 figures, Ethan, real money." Ethan stopped walking. "I can't." "Why not?" "Because this life, the one where I chase patterns and build cases and barely see my daughter, I already lived it once. It destroyed me. I'm not going back." "It doesn't have to be like that. We can build something different, flexible hours, remote work, whatever you need to make it work with Mia." "Adrienne, just think about it, please. You're too good at this to waste it." "I'm not wasting anything. I'm choosing what matters." She was quiet for a moment. "Fair enough, but the offer stands if you change your mind." "I won't, but thank you." They hung up. Mia ran back to him. "Who was that?" "Just work stuff. Old work." "Are they trying to get you back?" "Yeah." "What did you say?" "I said no." Mia grinned. "Good." They drove to the ice cream place they always went, ordered the flavors they always ordered, sat at the same table by the window. Normal, simple. Theirs. "Dad?" Mia said through a mouthful of chocolate chip. "Yeah? Are you happy now? Like, really happy?" Ethan thought about it. About the garage. About the case he'd just closed. About the choice between invisibility and significance. And he realized the question was wrong. It wasn't about choosing. It was about balance. "Yeah, Bug, I'm really happy." "Me too." They finished their ice cream, drove home. Mia did her homework at the kitchen table while Ethan made dinner. They ate together, watched a movie, laughed at the stupid parts. Just a regular Saturday night. Exactly what it should be. 3 months later, the trials concluded. David Brennan took a plea deal. 15 years. No parole. Rachel Simmons testified against Dmitry Kuznetsov and Alexei Volkov in exchange for immunity and witness protection. The prosecution used her testimony, combined with the surveillance footage and Robert's recordings, to build an airtight case. Dmitry got life without parole. Volkov got 35 years. The warehouse raid led to 12 more arrests. The 3 girls they'd found were returned to their families. The organization that had been operating for decades collapsed in less than a week. Robert Voss avoided prosecution entirely. His cooperation and the recordings he'd made were considered evidence of someone trapped in an impossible situation trying to do the right thing. He retired permanently, moved to a small town in Oregon, called Adrienne once a week. She didn't always answer, but sometimes she did. Voss Capital survived. Barely. But Adrienne rebuilt it, cleaner, stronger. She implemented new oversight protocols, hired external auditors, made transparency the company's new foundation. She sent Ethan updates sometimes, progress reports, articles about the comeback, invitations to consult on specific projects. He turned them all down politely, every time. But he did read the articles. The business journals praising her leadership. The features about the woman who'd saved her father's company from its own corruption. And he smiled, because she'd earned it. As for Ethan, he went back to the garage, back to oil changes and transmission work and customers who just needed their cars fixed. Back to picking Mia up from school every day. Back to being present. Except word had spread, quietly, through certain circles, about a mechanic who'd taken down a criminal organization, who'd exposed corruption at the highest levels, and walked away like it was nothing. People came to him sometimes, not for car repairs. A small business owner who suspected her partner was embezzling, a nonprofit director who couldn't figure out why their donations kept disappearing, a retired teacher whose pension fund had somehow evaporated. He helped when he could, on his terms, in his time, never more than a few hours a week, never anything that took him away from Mia for long. And he never charged, just asked that if they found out he was right, they'd do the right thing with the information. Most of them did. At night, after Mia went to bed, he still looked at data sometimes, still chased patterns. But now it was a choice, not an obsession, not an escape, just curiosity, the thing that had always driven him, but now with boundaries. One evening, 6 months after everything ended, Ethan's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Yeah? Mr. Cole, my name is Catherine Morrison. I'm the CEO of Morrison Financial Group. I have a problem I think you might be able to help with. Ethan set down the wrench he'd been using. What kind of problem? The kind where numbers don't add up and people I trust might be lying to me. Sounds familiar? I heard about what you did at Voss Capital, how you saw patterns no one else could see, how you dismantled a billion-dollar fraud operation in less than 2 weeks. I got lucky. Luck doesn't expose international crime syndicates, Mr. Cole. Ethan walked to his workbench, stared at the photo of him and Mia at her soccer game, both of them grinning, covered in grass stains and happiness. What makes you think I'd be interested? He asked. Because people like you don't chase money. You chase truth, and I'm offering you a chance to find it. I'm not looking for work. I'll pay you double what Voss did, triple if you want. It's not about money. Then what is it about? Ethan thought about Mia upstairs doing homework, about the promise he'd made to stay present, about the balance he'd finally found after 5 years of searching. It's about knowing when to say yes and when to walk away, he said. Right now, I'm walking away. What if I told you that what's happening at my company isn't just fraud? What if I told you it's hurting people, real people with families and mortgages and lives that depend on us doing the right thing? Ethan closed his eyes. That's not fair. No, it's not, but it's true. He was quiet for a long moment. Send me the details. I'll look at them, but I'm not promising anything. That's all I ask. She hung up. Ethan stood there in his garage, phone in hand, feeling the pull of something he'd tried to leave behind. The pattern, the puzzle, the thing that made him good at this in the first place. He walked upstairs. Checked on Mia. She was asleep, textbook open on her chest. He moved it gently, pulled the blanket up. "Love you, Bug," he whispered. She stirred slightly. "Love you too, Dad." Outside, the city hummed, data flowing through invisible channels, patterns waiting to be seen, problems waiting to be solved. And somewhere in all of it, Ethan Cole existed, not invisible anymore, not desperately chasing significance, not proving anything to anyone, just present, capable, choosing carefully when to step forward and when to stay still. Because he'd learned the hardest lesson, the one that took losing everything to understand. Intelligence wasn't defined by credentials or titles or the complexity of the problems you solved. It was defined by knowing what mattered, having the courage to protect it, and the wisdom to recognize that sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply show up. For the people who needed you, for the life you'd built, for the truth that kept calling you forward. Not because you had to prove anything to anyone, but because you'd finally proven something to yourself, that you were enough, exactly as you were. Grease-stained boots and all. And that being seen wasn't about standing on a platform in front of billionaires. It was about being present for a 7-year-old girl who needed her dad at a soccer game, who needed him to choose her every single time. That was the real pattern, the one that mattered most. And Ethan Cole had finally learned to see it.